As well, I want to wish all the moms a happy Mother's Day, and thanks for choosing to spend the day with us, or at least your morning with us. And we want to acknowledge that we understand that for Mother's Day, for some people, it's an exciting, it's a happy day. For others, people, it can be a sad day. It can be a hard day. And so we just want to let you know wherever you are, whether this is like you're a mom, an expectant mom, a hopeful mom, or you're grieving a loss in there, we just want to let you know our thoughts and prayers and gratitude is with you on this day. And we were trying to think ahead of time, we're like, is there something special we could do for the moms on Mother's Day? And one of the initial thoughts that we had is like, what if we gave all the moms who volunteer, what if we gave them the day off on Mother's Day? And then we realized like, well then we just might as well not have church. And so moms, sorry, like every other arena of your life, we couldn't do it without you. So we'll just have to say, thank you so much. And that's about all we can do. But while we're talking about Mother's Day and leaning into this thing on Inkblot, I want to make a comment on Mother's Day, something that I found interesting. I don't know if you guys have realized this as well. But there's this weird thing that goes on with Mother's Day in terms of like, I think like the things we can get as gifts and the way people talk about it. And you'll see the distinction, especially when it comes to Father's Day. Because like when it gets to Father's Day, people are like, man, my dad, he's great. I love my dad. And some people even like go so far like, my dad is my hero, and they'll say things like that. But with mom, we don't say that. We have to kind of make it competitive, which I'm okay with because I'm competitive, but it has to be like, I can't just say my mom's great. I have to say I have the best mom ever. And like that's the thing, no one ever goes like, oh yeah, my mom, she's wonderful. It's no, my mom is the best mom ever. In which I would have to say, I'm sorry, you're wrong, because I know the best moms ever. It is my wife and my mom, and I say they're on a virtual tie for best mom ever. And then whoever happens to be nearest to me, I say, but they kind of eked ahead a little bit. So since we're here, my wife is a little bit ahead as the best mom ever right now. But it's just interesting to me how we've kind of made it competitive. And you'll see this when you look at things that you can buy for your moms for Mother's Day. So you can get the hat, the world's best mom. There's a t-shirt that says the same thing. I'd like for you to acknowledge the punctuation on that. It does not read best mom ever. It reads best mom ever. That is an important distinction. You can get a mug, the number one mom. You can get a trophy, world's best mom. Have any moms gotten a trophy for Mother's Day? Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. That makes me happy. And then there's the phone case. World's best mom. I just want to be clear, I'm showing you all these not just to prove a point, but I'm showing them to you with the Amazon picture and prices attached in case if you completely forgot to get something, you can just be like, oh, yeah. I gave you a couple options when you get home from church. It's, Mom, I'm really sorry. I bought it, but it hasn't come in yet. Just don't check the date and location of purchase, but it just hasn't. That Amazon, they're always doing stuff like that. And I understand that we do that because no one's buying their mom that. No one's buying their mom like, world's okayest mom. This is what you got. But today, for what we're going to cover, I have no ambitions, and I've seen people do this before on Mother's Day, of showing you how to be the best mom ever, because I just have no experience in that, and if I said anything, you shouldn't listen to me anyway. However, I can show you that you are not the worst mom ever. I think that's probably a more accurate card title than rather than all the moms being the best mom ever. That's not possible. That if we gave those out like, hey, you're not the worst. That's not very thankful. Like no one's doing that. This is why no card companies have started consulting me on what to do. Hey, you're not the worst. There you go. But today I want to show you how you are not the worst mom ever, because we're going to look at a story in the Bible of someone who is the worst, we'll say, biblical mom ever. And that's where we're going to kind of find ourselves. And I got this title. I found this lady online when I typed in world's worst mom. This mom, I don't know if you've seen her picture. She wrote a book called Free Range Parenting. She is kind of universally known, or at least in our country, as the world's worst mom. Because she let, I think it was her 8-year-old, ride the New York City subway by themselves. And so, like, you can judge that. I'm not really worried about what you think about that. But I found this interesting, that there are 7.8 million web pages that discuss whether or not she is the world's worst mom. So on the days, moms, that you're feeling like you're really struggling and you can't get anything right, you can just be comforted in the fact that there are not almost 8 million web pages discussing how bad of a mom you are or how much you may have struggled along the way. So there you go. There's kind of like a silver lining to everything. That's kind of nice. And so today, this passage I want to look at, if you have your Bible, open up to Matthew chapter 20. We're going to be looking in verses 20 through 28. And we're going to look at this passage that I really view, it's the worst biblical mom. And she doesn't make a huge error. She doesn't make a huge mistake. She more so has something that she perceives incorrectly. And this is something that I wanted to talk about on Mother's Day, but to be honest with you, it affects all of us. And we all have these issues. We all have these struggles. And just to be clear, in terms of what we're going to do in the minutes ahead that we have together, this is not, I'm not a very sentimental person. And so I know, like, just so you know what's coming, like, at no point in time during the service are we going to, like, circle up and, like, each of us look deeply into another mother's eyes and tell them how wonderful they are, and then we write an acrostic poem with the letters of mother, and we say they're magnificent and outstanding and terrific and here. I don't know what you say for the you're here. I can say that. So, like, that's not what we're going to do today. This is what we're going to do, and this is the most helpful I can be on any Sunday, but especially on Mother's Day, is I just want to show you clearly who Jesus is. I want to show you very, very clearly who he is, because I really, really believe that when we see Jesus clearly, that everything else falls into place. And when I hear people talk about a faith that they've rejected or a God that they've left behind, I really think it's because they rejected a distorted view of who God is, or they had a misperception, because I believe when we actually see God clearly, our automatic response is going to be to worship and to follow him. And so that's what I want to do in the moments that we have. So this is Matthew chapter 20, and we're going to be looking at verses 20 through 28. And it starts with this. It says, "Then the mother of Zebedee's sons came to Jesus with her sons, and kneeling down, asked a favor of him. 'What is it you want?' he asked. And she said, 'Grant that one of these 2 sons of mine may sit at your right, and the other at your left in your kingdom.'" And so she comes up to Jesus in this moment, and this is an important distinction. She asks, basically, that they would have positions of honor. She says, "Hey, I've got these boys. We don't know what she thought about her boys, but she says, I want them to be something special. I want to be a part of something significant. And I know that you are special, and I know that you are significant. So this is what I would like, is that when you come, give them the seats of honor. Give them the positions that everyone else would want." She's ambitious. I like this. She's a go-getter. She understands, like, hey, Jesus, I know you've got 12 disciples, and I know you're going to establish a kingdom. I don't want them in the back, even of the 12, because then no one will remember them. I want them right near the front. And there's a couple questions that pop up right away. The first one that I think is really important is, where is Zebedee? Like, right? Like, we talk about, like, absentee fatherism. Like, we've got it back here. Like, mother of Zebedee's sons. So we've got the mother. We've got the sons of Zebedee. And Zebedee is nowhere to be found. So I wonder that. We've also got other questions in terms of, like, how much did the boys know? Like, what's exactly happening? What are the dynamics in this moment? Like, is it the mom coming up and the boys are, like, dragging behind her, like, "Mom, come on, don't embarrass me. It's Jesus." Like, is that what's going on? Or is it like, "Hey, Mom, will you ask Jesus?" "No, we don't want to ask. Will you ask him for us?" Like, "Okay, fine, I'll ask." So she comes up there. And so she makes this huge request. In case if you were wondering what this would look like today, I think the translation would be, "Then the mother of Zebedee's sons came to Jesus, the coach, and said, 'Jesus, I really think if you let my sons play forward, that we would win a lot more games.' And Jesus said, 'What is it you want? Yeah, come on, just a little more PT. That's what they're looking for, a little more playing time. They're called the sons of thunder anyway. Come on, they're like dynamite. You're going to have them.'" I went off a little too far on that. So this is what we probably do know from all those questions, is she probably had a relationship with Jesus. Okay, so she probably knew Jesus. And in fact, at the crucifixion, we see that this mother is one of the few women who are at the foot of the cross. So she has a relationship with Jesus. We know she's ambitious, and she probably wants what's best for her sons. Okay? which is a spot that I think many of us find ourselves in that we can relate to. That like, yeah, we want our desires, and we'll do whatever it takes to help ourselves and help others fulfill those desires. But she's got a big error. This is what Jesus says, verse 22. You don't know what you are asking, Jesus said to them. Can you drink the cup I am going to drink? And we can, they answered. Just to be clear, what are they going to say? Like their mom's already come up and made this big request. And then he goes, can you drink the cup? They're not going to go, Mom, we probably, like we'll settle back. No, they have to answer like, yeah, we can. And Jesus responds, it says, Jesus said to them, you will indeed drink from my cup, saying, you will endure what I'm going to endure. And so he goes, at first, can you drink the cup? Can you face what you're going to have to face? And they go, yeah. He goes, you will have to face it. But to sit at my right or left is not for me to grant. These places belong to those for whom they have been prepared by my Father. So he goes, yeah, you're going to endure the things you're going to have to endure. That's going to happen regardless. But I am not the one to grant the positions of honor. But I think it's fascinating that it starts with this. You don't know what you are asking. You don't know what you are asking. And so we have to ask, okay, so what are they asking? Well, it's really simple, and I think you'll identify with this very quickly. Is that here they are, if we could say like, this is the starting point for Zebedee's sons. And they have a desire. They have a goal. For them, they would be honored, that they would be in a position of significance, that they wouldn't just kind of wander through life and then be forgotten and then go off and everyone forget about them. No, is that they would be honored, that they would be significant. And so they have a desire, and they're here, and then they have a goal. And then this is what they do, is they come to Jesus, and they basically say, hey, Jesus, could you like fast pass us to the goal? Like, we don't want to have to go through everything else. Could you just kind of like hit fast forward on our lives, do whatever you have to do, sprinkle some of your Jesus magic along the way, and kind of help us get to the end game? That's what we're looking for. And it's something that we often face. That we say, okay, here I am, this is where I want to be, and so this is what I'm going to do. I'm gonna pray to God that he'll just expedite things, because like he's like the ruler. Certainly he can move a few things into place, get me a little bit ahead. Certainly he can do that. And so we ask God to do it. We say, hey God, here are my goals, here are my dreams. I would like you to fulfill them, because they're kind of hard. And I want to show you, it's not just them and it's not just us. We see other people identify this. This is verse 24. It says, when the 10, so these are the other closest followers of Jesus. It says, when the 10 heard about this, they were indignant. That's a great word. It's not like they're just mad. They're not upset. They are indignant with the brothers. They're indignant with the two brothers. Now, let me ask, why? Not because they were offended by it. I mean, why are they indignant? Because they didn't think of it first, right? How often do we associate with that? That like, man, I don't like people who are self-centered. I just don't like people who are self-centered, because when they're around, everyone's focusing on them and no one can focus on me. I just don't like people who are so self-centered. It's just, they just rub me the wrong way. And that's where these guys are. They're so upset because they want the positions of honor. They want to be in that place. And so they're furious about it. And we see there's this common dynamic that all the disciples in their day, and I would say almost all the disciples in our day, and we all have shared this at one point in time, our tendency to treat Jesus not as Lord, but as a consultant. Not as the God of the universe, not as the ruler of everything, not as the creator of all things, but as a helpful guide, an aid, someone to help kind of get us to where we want to go faster. And we all do it. And we'll pray to God and we'll say, hey, God, I'm here. This is where I want to be. I want you to make that happen. And here's the problem with it, is that God doesn't let that happen. When we pray those prayers, my guess is, and you felt this, God doesn't respond. And we'll pray it often. And our impression will be that God is silent. And this is why God goes silent. If I could explain it like this. You have all, I'm sure every single one of us has at one point in our life, we have felt devalued. Devalued. I think this is the reason why we have Mother's Day. Like, no one was sitting around and going, moms, they just get too much gratitude. We're just probably saying thank you a little too much to our moms. And so, as a nation, let's just tone it back a little bit, okay? Like moms, they're kind of getting big heads about stuff. They're a little uppity about having birth and raising us from the time we were in the womb. And so let's just cut it back a little bit, moms. Like, no one says it. They went, you know what, we need to say thanks. So let's at least have a day to remind us all the other days to say thanks, because we are devaluing our moms. And we've all felt that. We felt at times that we were devalued, that someone was using us. And what happens, these are the dynamics of what happens in that moment, is you are a person created in the image of God. Inherently, because you exist, you have value as a person. You are significant. Without ever doing anything, without ever helping anyone, whether society as a whole would consider you a good or a bad person, you have value. You matter. And what happens is that some people, when we get ambitious, we go, I'm here and I want to be here, and this person, they could help me. And so I'm not going to approach them because they matter. I'm not going to approach them because they're significant. I'm going to choose, instead of treating them as a human, I'm going to treat them as an object, as a way to get from here to there. And that's probably happened to you. You have felt used by somebody. You have felt like your human beingness, I think I made that up, okay? Your personhood has been reduced to an object where someone used you to get to their end. And this is the dynamic that's different, is that we're here and we feel like we get reduced to an object, but God is here. Like, God is way up there, creator of everything. And what we do is we go, I'm here, I want to get here. Instead of letting God redirect my goals and redirect my desires, I'm going to use him as an object to achieve what I want. And this is what God does. When it happens to us, when someone tries to use us as an object, we do one of two things. Either we let people walk all over us, or we just get mad. Right? We either just kind of let people use us as a rug to get to their goals. Go ahead, step all over me. That's fine. Get to what you want. Or we just get upset and we tell people how important we are and how significant we are and how much we matter. And so we usually take one of those options. God doesn't choose either of those, because God knows who he is. And so he's not going to dilute that. He's not going to reduce that down for any single one of us, because he is God. And he's smart enough to know that diluting that, bringing that down, doesn't do good for anyone. So this is what he does. And he exits. Now, this is probably where it's happened, is you've had a moment where you said, hey, God, I really want this. I'm going to pray really hard for this to happen, because it's my desire. I really want to make this team. I really want to get this thing. I really want this person to notice me. And it's all about our dreams and all our desires and all that we want. And then we pray to God and we hear nothing. He seemingly goes silent. And then we assume that God doesn't exist. And we go, well, God, you didn't answer me. It's not that God doesn't exist. It's that God refuses to be an object. He refuses to be devalued, to allow him to be dumbed down. You see, I would say that the primary way that we approach God in our world today is we approach him as a means to an end. We go, I'm here, this is my end, this is where I want to be, I want God to help me. And here's what's different, is that God is a means, okay? But he is also the end. That he is the path that we travel, but he is also the goal that we must arrive at. And so hear me very, very clearly on this, because I don't want to get this mistaken. You should have dreams. You should have desires. You should have goals. You should have things that you want in life. I'm not like building the case here this morning that you should be spineless and directionless, okay? But there is a big difference in approaching faith and approaching God as a way to fulfill all the things that you want. And there's a massive difference between that and coming to God and saying, what do you want? Allow me to live that out. This is why we're talking about it today. Because I think we do that individually. I think we do it for the people around us too. And I think sometimes we push people around us into things that are not actually best for them. And it's funny because I'm a parent, I've got little kids. And it amazes me the competitive culture that we so desperately want our kids to get ahead. And it starts from like when they're really young, like, oh my goodness, they rolled over at 3 months instead of 3 months and 2 weeks. They're going to be an athlete. Like, they're going to be the next Usain Bolt. It's incredible. Did you see him roll over? We need to, like, get some track shoes for him now. We need to get them running. Like, I know they're, like, just barely out of the stage of fetus, but, like, we need to get them going as quick as we can. I want to, like, talk to these parents. And like, hey, guys, like, I know that was impressive, the rollover, but let's just acknowledge the fact that, like, DNA, genes, plays a part. And so, I don't know, maybe let's skip the track and focus on the calculus, okay? Not trying to make a comment about you guys at all, but I'm just saying, I think that would be their better bet. Let's go for calculus instead. And it's interesting because we so desperately want people to get ahead, and we so desperately want people to accomplish everything that we think matters. And I think as part of that, sometimes we can send people down the wrong path, and we can push them in the wrong direction. Let me give you an example of this. When I was growing up, I loved basketball. I still love basketball today. Now, if you have played with me, you would not realize that, because you go, wow, did he just pick up a basketball? Is this like first time ever? I'd be like, no, many times before. But I did. I absolutely loved it. And I had a lot of people when I was younger push me in that. And if I could be clear, very false hopes. Now, no one told me I was making the NBA, okay? Because I had much redder hair when I was younger, and I think that just basically excluded me from the start. Like, no, there's only one redhead in the NBA, and it's probably not you. So, like, I had people, they pushed me and they directed me, and that was good things. Here's the thing, that wasn't what I was supposed to do. It wasn't. And I feel like in ways, in their desire to push me to be my best at one individual thing, it's very easy that they could have sent me down the wrong path entirely. Now, fortunately, I feel like I found that. I feel like I found that path where God was directing me. But there's a massive difference between just pushing and shoving and do this, accomplish, yes, you're going to be the best in everything. And for others and for ourselves going, God, guide me. God, direct me. Don't just aim me, okay? Show me where you want me to go, and then help me get there along the way. This is the issue that they face. And every single time we come to God and we say, here's my goal, help me get there, we treat God as a consultant. And that God does not exist. But when we go, God, where am I supposed to go? And help me get there. We treat him as Lord, and we find that he's near to us. Now, here would be the normal thing that we do in this moment, is I'd ask a couple questions, and I go, well, which one are you? Which camp are you? Do you view God? Do you view Jesus? Do you view this whole faith thing that we do? Is this helping you get to your goal, or is it your goal? Are you treating God as a consultant or as Lord? But we don't actually have to ask those questions this morning, because Jesus does something amazingly brilliant in this text. Is instead of just kind of laying it out there in front of them, he uses an equivalent of an Inkblot test. And he goes, like we look at the Inkblots earlier, and based upon what you see, it's supposed to reveal things about you. And so he gives us an Inkblot test, and he goes, I want to tell you a story. I want to make some points. And you tell me what you see. And that's going to reveal for you, am I consultant or am I Lord? And so this is what he says, and I think this is absolutely amazing. It says, Jesus called them together and said, You know that the rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their high officials exercise authority over them. This is what he's saying. And he's saying, like, you know, the people of this world, our general nature is to use others. Is that when we get influence, when we get power, when we are in any position of authority, our general nature is to use others to help us look better, to help us achieve what we want, to help us accomplish our ambitions. He goes, you know, this is just how the world works. And if I could just be very clear, you know this, right? Like, could we just get a slight nod of the head for a little bit of audience participation that we can acknowledge that we're here? Okay, the lights are bright enough. I don't know if you're nodding your heads or not, so there we go. But like, we know this. We know this is how the world works. We know that people will push ahead and do whatever they can to advance and use others along the way. And then he says, I think, the four most important words. Not so with you. You know people use others over and over again. You know they use them. You know coaches use players. You know parents use students. You know students use teachers. You know bosses use their workers. You know this is how it works. You know people are constantly just using each other to achieve what they want and what they think matters. And he goes, not so with you. And then he gives us the alternative. He says, instead, whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant. And whoever wants to be first must be your slave. That word may throw you off. It's another way of saying last. Whoever wants to be first in line, coming up in all the glory, they're the one who's at the back. Whoever wants to be first must be your slave. Just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. I love this. This is amazing. He asked this. Okay, which are you? Do you view me as consultant or Lord? And it comes down to this question. What are you? How do you view you? Are you a servant? Or are you something else? Are you one who serves others? Are you the person who's waiting to go last? Or are you the one who's always pushing to be first? How do you view you? To make this really clear, just to make sure there's no misunderstanding. When he says servant, it means one who serves. I don't want there to be any confusion on that. That's what a servant is. It's someone who serves. Now, to be clear, I do think that he is far more talking about an attitude of servanthood than the action. But if I can make this distinction, you can serve, you can have the action without having the attitude. But if you have the attitude, you will always have the action. I'm going to say that again so that's not too confusing. It is possible for you to serve others without having an attitude of service. But if you have an attitude of service, you will always find yourself serving others. And so where are you on that? And this is why it matters. This is why it's so significant. Is because if you view yourself as anything other than a servant, which means you don't view Jesus as Lord, if you view yourself as anything other than a servant, this is what's going to happen. Is you're going to come to God, and you're going to go, here's where I am, here's where I want to be. I expect you to kind of help me out, sprinkle some Jesus magic on that, get me to the end, get me there a little faster. And God is going to be so frustrating to you because he's not going to answer and he's not going to help. And what's going to happen is you're going to come in here, you're going to say your prayers, and you can do all these other things that you think a good person of faith does, and you're just going to be so infuriated with God. Because all the things in terms of how you think they should play out, how you hope they would be, he seems to be doing nothing to get you there. He seems to be doing nothing to speed that along. And it's going to put you at odds with God again and again because you're not going to be able to figure out, why aren't you answering this? Why aren't you responding to this? Why did you let this happen? Because this is where I know I should be. And as long as we view ourselves as anything other than a servant, we're going to find ourselves tense and frustrated when it comes to our relationship with God. But if we switch, and if we go, no, I am a servant. That's who I am. And God, He is Lord. He is Lord. We're going to begin to see things in a whole different light. And here's what cracks me up about it. Here's what I find so perplexing. Is the reason why we want to get ahead, the reason why we want to accomplish all the things that we inherently want to accomplish is because we want to be great, right? And I don't think that's a bad thing to say. We want to do something great. We want to do something significant. We want to do something that matters. That's why we push so hard, and that's why we constantly, at every stage in our life, are checking others around us and trying to make sure that we're getting ahead, is because we want to be great. But the funny thing is, and I don't mean this to be too hard and heavy, but we should acknowledge that this is reality, is that eventually it's all going to be taken from us. And so all these things that we push so hard to achieve eventually are not going to matter. We were down at a conference this week, and I shared a hotel room with Joel, who leads worship. And we had a humorous conversation. Most of my conversations with Joel are humorous, but we had an especially humorous conversation that ESPN was on. And Joel's not a big sports guy, is how he puts it. So I felt like I had to apologize every time I put on ESPN. So ESPN is on. And Joel comes out and he goes, man, I feel like every time I'm watching ESPN. And I was like, wait, how often do you watch ESPN? And he goes, I don't really watch ESPN. I was like, okay, so we're on the same page. He goes, but every time I do, I feel like they always talk about someone's legacy. Like every single time an athlete comes out that's a good athlete, like, oh, what do you want your legacy to be? And they're always asking them about their legacy. And it's funny to me. I was thinking about it and I was like, you're exactly right. No one is ever going to say, hey, what do you want your, LeBron James, what do you want your legacy to be? And the correct answer would be, well, I'm going to be forgotten. Like, not now, not the next generation, not even probably the generation after that, but eventually everyone is going to forget that I ever existed. And that's how it's going to be. Again, and they're like, oh man, what a bummer for Mother's Day that we're talking about this. But I think we need to keep this in mind. This is the reality, guys. One day, you will be forgotten. You will. You may have like a great grandkid. That was easy for me to say. Like way down the line, who is just interested in your family tree and gets on Ancestry.com or whatever they're using 200 years in the future. I don't know. Who looks you up and who can identify your name. But that's about it. Like, really, that's about it. And what we realize when we actually look at things for once in that perspective, we realize all the things that we have been pushing so hard to achieve and accomplish, they're not what makes us great. But if we would switch, if instead of trying to push of how far we can be ahead on the fast track, instead if we switched and we said, no, I'm a servant, we find ourselves a part of the greatest thing on earth. God is forever. God is amazing. And He is forever. And He has invited you to be a part of that. And the fascinating thing is, this is why Jesus says, the last shall be first, and the first shall be last. Is because those who are trying so hard to get ahead will ultimately, not now, and this is what makes it so hard, not in the next 10, 20, probably even 40 years. Not now, but eventually will be forgotten. But those who adopt the position of servant and serve the Lord, they will be with Him forever. So with all that said, I have one simple question for you. How do you view you? How do you view you? Are you a servant? Or are you something else? Are you one who serves? Or are you anything else? This is not, and I think we've gotten this wrong sometime over the years. This is not to have a poor opinion of yourself. This is not to have low self-esteem. In fact, it's quite the opposite. It's to fully embrace your role that God has created you to have, a significant one. And Jesus goes, even me, the Son of God, came to serve. And so this is not, oh, I don't matter. They're so much better than me. They're so much getting ahead. No. It's to encompass every moment of your day and understanding, I have been sent by the creator of the universe to serve because he is Lord, not me. So how do you view you? Here's my guess, is that there may be like two of you who are like, oh yeah, I got this. Like I nailed it. You're probably liars. But the rest of us, for the rest of us, we go, hey, I struggle with this. You know what? All too often I approach God and I just go, God, this is what I want you to do. And we struggle with this because this is hard. And so this is how you turn it around. Let me tell you this very, very simply. Is you come to God and you ask this over and over again. God, let me see you clearly. God, let me see you for who you really are. Let me tell you, when I pray, and I have a hard time praying, I'm a little too ADD for that, honestly. But when I pray, I come to God and I go, okay, God, this is how it's going down. We got this. I don't know if you're paying attention up there. There's a lot of stuff going down. But I've already researched it. I've already figured things out. These are the things I need you to do. And that's how most of my prayers go. But instead, if I actually stop and I go, okay, God, you're God. I'm not. Help me to see you. Help me to see you as you really are. Help me to understand not my small significance, but that I am created in your image. You were not created in mine. I was created in yours. And help me to acknowledge that. Help me to grasp. Help me to understand the significance that I have in light of who you are. Help me to understand the love that you have for me. And this is why this is the only way to do that, is because you were created by God. You cannot fully know who you are until you know who he is. It is impossible. You cannot fully understand your identity until you begin to grasp who God is, because he is your maker. And we can only know ourselves as much as we know him. And so that's my hope for you. Not that you would get all the small things right, not that you would figure this all out, but that you would see God for who he is, that he is Lord, not consultant. Let me pray for us. Lord, I thank you. I thank you that you are who you are. That over and over again in our lives, we try to reduce you down, we try to dumb you down, and we try to make you something that you're not. And Lord, I thank you that you refuse that you absolutely refuse to be anything less than Lord. And Father, for us, this gets hard because we're busy and we're tired and we feel like there are a million voices in our lives telling us what matters, what's most significant, what it means to be great. And the problem is that almost all those voices are liars. And so, Lord, let us hear yours. Let us hear your voice. Let us see you for how good, how loving, how kind, and how great you really are. And let us find our place in that.